Welcome to Lesson 6 of Module 4, Ecosystem Dynamics. In this video, we're going to be looking for reasons why past ecosystems may have changed. And we're going to be looking at specifically at the biotic and abiotic factors that may change in short and long periods of time. But also in class, we're going to be evaluating some of the hypotheses that people have proposed to explain some of these trends that we have seen in ecosystems. So when we talk about the abiotic characteristics of habitats and those which may change, we can look at them in a terrestrial or an aquatic focus. So tropical climates, they're usually high in rainfall, quite warm, and usually what we see in rainforests. We have temperate climates, which are cool, high altitudes, and usually we see winter snow. And then there are semi-arid to arid deserts, which have low rainfall, desert-like environments, and hot. And we may see some ecosystems transition between each of these three. And when we look at aquatic ecosystems, we're looking at freshwater environments, and these is where there is low water salt concentration, and we may be referring to, in this case, inland lakes, rivers, and streams. And then we have our marine environments, which have a high water salt concentration, and these are things such as the sea and the ocean. So some short-term changes to ecosystems and population, we may see some seasonal migration, known as immigration or emigration. So immigration, organisms coming into a population, emigration is organisms moving out. And we can see this happen seasonally due to different temperatures. This is also due to sometimes nesting seasons, and during the nesting season, we do see an increase in population numbers. There may be short-term changes due to overgrazing of resources, and there's also just seasonal changes to rainfall and temperature, and this can happen within the months, within the seasons themselves, or biannually. Some longer term changes to ecosystems, these can occur due to introduced species, due to extensive and longer term climate changes, so changes in rainfall and temperature related to La Nina and El Nino, which are climate models. We can see it due to extinction of organisms within ecosystem, and then changes in vegetation and resources, which sometimes are a follow-on effect due to these changes in climate. When we talk about localized extinction, we can also refer to it as extirpation, and this occurs when a population of a particular species no longer exists in an area which it used to formerly live. However, there are populations of the species that exist elsewhere, just not in that same area. These species with specialized requirements for diet or habitat are more susceptible to selection pressures and any ecosystem changes. These local extinctions are more likely to occur when the populations become fragmented and the migration of individuals in and out of an area is limited. Some species that have suffered local extinctions may be good candidates for reintroduction to their habitat once the threatening processes have been eliminated. So this, just a case study we're going to look at quickly, is the bilby, and its original distribution is looking at in the pink color there. And it did occupy around 70% of Australia. Now the population, which is in the black, in that color there, is now only about 20% of Australia. And these local extinctions did happen due to loss of habitat, hunting, predation, and competition from introduced species. So some of the conservation efforts that people have tried is captive breeding programs and the reintroduction to some areas of the former range. So we can see that the change in the ecosystem did in fact cause changes in the population itself. And the other one, which we're going to look at in this video in some detail, are invasive species. And these organisms are able to establish populations outside their natural ranges. And if they're not usually part of the ecosystem, they can have drastic consequences for any of the native biodiversity and the ecosystem itself. And it's because invasive species have an ability to maintain a self-sustaining population. So due to long-term conservation and economic impacts, many countries now have strict biosecurity laws to prevent potentially invasive species crossing their borders. So obviously they see big changes in their ecosystems, just like we have in Australia. And invasive species have the largest impact on island and isolated ecosystems. And this is because the species in these ecosystems have evolved in isolation, which means they are often highly specialized and have very few encounters with new species. So they don't have the variation which we would see in larger populations that are affected by quite a large number of factors. So they're just a few of the reasons how we can see ecosystems change. So tune in for the lessons for this video, but also make sure you tune in for lesson 7.